It has just gone midnight on July 26, 1944, and deep in the heart of occupied Poland, a daring top-secret mission known as Operation Most 3 is underway. As an Allied Douglas C-47 Dakota transport aircraft comes in to land on a boggy makeshift runway, a group of shadowy figures emerges from the pitch-black forest, dragging wooden carts across the waterlogged terrain. These mysterious men are members of the Polish underground resistance and are hauling a shocking cargo. Components of a V-2 rocket stolen right from under the Germans' noses and now bound for Allied laboratories to be carefully analyzed. The Poles hurriedly load the rocket parts onto the C-47, and the pilot ignites the engine, ready to roll down the landing strip and disappear into the night sky. But the aircraft goes nowhere. The extra weight and poor ground conditions have conspired to lodge the Dakota's wheels firmly in the thick mud. The engine roars, but the wheels refuse to move. The Germans could be here any minute. They need to get the C-47 out of here, fast. The V-2 rocket was the world's first long-range guided ballistic missile, developed for Nazi Germany by Werner von Braun. Envisioned as a so-called vengeance weapon, this 27,600-pound flying menace was designed to wreak havoc on Allied population centers as payback for bombing raids on German cities. Its liquid propellant rocket engine would allow it to travel over 200 miles, easily reaching London from occupied Europe, breaking the sound barrier as it hurtled towards its targets at top speeds of over 3,500 miles per hour. Upon reaching the designated point, the engine would cut off and the V-2 would plummet to Earth, instantly reducing entire buildings to rubble and almost certainly claiming the lives of all within. While German air raids on Britain had been taking place since 1940 using bomber aircraft, the V-2 would enable them to cause destruction on a whole new level, and without putting their air crews at risk. In July 1943, von Braun traveled to Adolf Hitler's Wolfslayer base in present-day Poland to show him film footage of a V-2 test at the Nazis' infamous Peenemünde Army Research Center rocket facility. The Führer had originally had his doubts about the rocket's potential, commenting that it seemed to be nothing more than an expensive long-range artillery shell. But now he watched intently, instantly realizing he was looking at a game-changer. According to reports, he leapt out of his chair and enthusiastically shook the scientist's hand, exclaiming, quote, "This is the decisive weapon of the war. Humanity will never be able to endure it. If I had had this weapon in 1939, we would not be at war now." With Hitler's hearty approval, the Germans doubled down on production of this new Wunderwaffe, or wonder weapon. The plan was to build 2,000 every month. Though they were now on the back foot against the Allies, they were sure that this powerful innovation would turn the tide of war back in their favor. However, the Allies were not ignorant of the Nazis' plans. Polish resistance had provided the British with intelligence, suggesting that the Germans were developing a new top-secret weapon at Peenemünde. While they were unable to supply specific information, it was enough to prompt an Allied bombing raid on the facility in August 1943. The resulting damage forced V-2 production to temporarily halt before relocating to the Mittelberg factory in central Germany, where the rockets would be assembled using slave labor from the nearby Mittelbau-Dora concentration camp. Yet, the Allies were not content with merely disrupting the manufacture of the rocket. They wanted to get their hands on it. But with production and testing of the weapon taking place deep behind enemy lines, it would be extremely difficult for American, British, or Commonwealth operatives to go anywhere near it. Instead, the ambitious mission of stealing a V-2 and shipping it to Britain was given to the Polish Home Army. How exactly they were supposed to achieve such a difficult task was not specified. The Poles started monitoring the area around the Blizna missile testing facility in central Poland, waiting for an opportunity to come along. One day in early 1944, the moment finally came. The Polish resistance spotted something lodged into the muddy bank of the river Bug near the village of Sarnaki, south of Siemiacze. Getting closer to investigate, they realized it was a V-2. Incredibly, one that hadn't exploded and was still almost entirely intact. Realizing they might never again get such a chance, they hurried over to the rocket and quickly covered it with bulrushes, hiding it from view. Soon enough, the Germans came looking for their missing rocket, determined to retrieve it before it fell into the wrong hands. Yet despite a week-long hunt involving both aerial and ground-based search parties, they returned empty-handed. The Poles' disguise had held up. With the Germans abandoning their efforts to locate the rocket, the coast was sufficiently clear for the Polish resistance to go back and retrieve it. They brought with them 4 Polish scientists who took on the nerve-wracking task of disassembling the V-2 before storing the parts in barrels, which were then transported to a barn in nearby Holowczyce. With the pieces of the rocket safely stowed away, the Polish Home Army informed the Allies of the good news. However, the most difficult part of the mission was yet to come: getting it to Britain. The Allies set about carefully devising a scheme to smuggle the weapon parts out of Poland from under the Nazis' noses. The plan was soon officially christened Operation Most 3, meaning Bridge 3 in Polish, though it was also referred to by the British as Operation Wildhorn 3. While the details for how to retrieve the V-2 parts were being put together, the rocket's guidance system was covertly transported to Warsaw for analysis at secret laboratories that worked with the resistance. Meanwhile, samples of the rocket's fuel were sent ahead to Britain. By late July 1944, the Allies were finally ready to put their plan into action. At around 10 p.m. on July 25th, a lone Douglas C-47 Dakota transport aircraft of the Royal Air Force's No. 267 Squadron set off from Brindisi in southern Italy and headed into the night. New Zealand native Flight Lieutenant Stanley G. Culliford guided the C-47 through the clouds, carefully crossing the Axis-held countries of Yugoslavia and Hungary. He was ably assisted by his Polish co-pilot, Flight Lieutenant Kazimierz Stryer, known to the British as Paddy, who provided the local knowledge necessary to reach their destination, a makeshift runway located on the outskirts of the village of Wałruda. Codenamed Model, this landing strip had been chosen by the Polish Home Army as the location for the collection of the stolen V-2 parts. After a tense 2-hour flight, the Dakota began circling over the improvised airfield soon after midnight and was quickly identified by a group of partisans who'd been informed of the plan by encrypted codes sent by a BBC radio. As the aircraft landed, the partisans emerged from the woods where they'd been hiding, dragging wooden carts containing the dismantled V-2 rocket. The pieces were bundled onto the C-47 as quickly as possible, both the aircrew and the partisans all too aware that discovery by the Germans would almost certainly mean paying with their lives. With the parts on board, the aircraft attempted to take off, but it proved to be easier said than done. Recent bad weather had left the runway wet and muddy, and now, with the extra weight from the V-2 parts, the Dakota's wheels were stuck. After removing the cargo they had just loaded onto the aircraft, the partisans desperately attempted to dig the wheels out with their hands, but it didn't make any difference. They even tried to push sticks and wooden slats underneath the wheels, yet nothing seemed to work. Racking his brain for a solution, Flight Lieutenant Dreyer thought the problem must be due to the parking brake being stuck and ordered the brake's hydraulic leads to be cut, but it was no use. The C-47 still refused to take off. By now, dawn was fast approaching. If they couldn't get the aircraft out of there soon, it would be found by the Germans with unthinkable consequences. Seeing German car headlights in the distance, Flight Lieutenant Culliford began contemplating blowing the Dakota up, along with all the evidence, to prevent the Nazis from realizing what had happened. But first, he was willing to give it one last shot. The partisans hurriedly dug trenches in front of the wheels. Once more, the engine was turned on. Finally, the wheels rolled into motion. With the V-2 parts back on board, the aircraft made its getaway, while the partisans swiftly separated and disappeared back into the woods. Weighed down by the heavy rocket components, the C-47's return flight to Brindisi over enemy territory took 5 long hours. Unable to use their brakes, when they eventually got to the airfield, the pilots had to land on an emergency landing strip. 2 days later, the Dakota flew the captured V-2 parts to Britain, where the crew was awarded gallantry medals by the Polish government, which was exiled in London at the time, with Flight Lieutenant Dreyer receiving the Cross of Valor. Meanwhile, Allied scientists got to work analyzing the rocket components. Though developing countermeasures against the V-2 proved difficult, with it going on to cause significant damage to British targets, the vital intelligence gained about its construction, mechanisms, and limitations greatly accelerated the Allies' own rocket development programs. What's more, it was a significant moral victory that demonstrated what was possible when the major Allied powers worked in collaboration with local resistance movements in occupied countries.